systems engineer, and I'm here to talk about Chef. Chef is a young product, about version 0.10 now. I've been working with it for about a year, and I'm really happy to be in on the ground floor. Chef is a configuration management engine written completely in Ruby from the bottom to top, and it lets you do things like install all your software stack automatically. It will provision everything. You can say there is no host running my application, and this will not do, and it will run out, and in a single command, after you've set up your infrastructure, or your Chef infrastructure, you can just press a button, and it will go out to Amazon or Rackspace or any cloud provider and provision a computer and install your application on it and have it up and running for you in minutes. For this audience, for a Ruby coder audience, I think Chef would be a tool for getting systems out of your way, and so you can get down to the business of writing your app and installing it. I'm going to install a PHP stack tonight for my demo. Chef will run on Windows, it runs on Linux. You can configure IIS with it, you can configure Apache, Nginx, all these web servers. You can build any stack you want to. I'm doing a very brief overview of what Chef is tonight. I would cover, how to install a Chef server. I would cover how to write what are called recipes and cookbooks, which are collections of configurations and rules that you can reuse. How to become involved in the Chef community, because there's a lot of sharing and reuse around there. Everything's Apache licensed. And in general, just cover how to build really big, kick-ass websites with Chef in no time at all. All right. Well, thanks for coming out. So first, a little bit about myself. My name is Charles. I am a systems engineer. I am a total operations junkie. I live for this stuff. I've been doing it since I was 16 years old, and I can't get enough. I'll probably be doing it the rest of my life. I am currently working as a consultant with Solution Set, which is a couple of blocks away, although they have not officially sponsored me here tonight. And I am currently managing, a few hundred nodes across multiple data centers, cloud providers, and a bunch of projects with Chef. I'm not a Rubyist. I am a systems guy. And there's my Twitter in case anybody wants to follow along. So let's start out with, I'm assuming this is mostly a coder's audience. So I'm also assuming most of you probably hate doing systems. Systems is hard, man. That's why there's guys like me around. You've got to provision things. You got to take care of authentication and user accounts. We have a saying in my world that if it's not monitored, it doesn't exist. There's security. You got to set up your networks, on and on and on and on, and then there's always some neckbeard like me getting in your way. So the other thing about systems is that it doesn't stay solved. The instant you roll a VM template or an AMI image, it's out of date. Just like carpentry, if you made an error creating your image, every time you've used that image now, you're duplicating that error out. If you build by hand, then it's almost guaranteed. One guy's got one style, one guy likes VI, one guy likes Emacs, and the default editor on your systems is different, and that's going to slow you down in an outage situation. And then on top of that, when you're building computers, when you're building systems, you don't get any of the really cool tools all the software guys have come up with over the last few years. We don't get any versioning, you don't get unit tests, you don't get build automation, there's no Hudson Jenkins, and there's no release controls. Once it's built, that's it. And half the time, you've deployed CentOS 5.2 2 years ago, and now it's way out of date, and you're stuck there. And you just wind up with all these choices that you've got to make. You've got to choose your MTA. You've got to choose your Linux distribution. You've got to choose your stack. You've got to choose Tomcat, Jetty, Postfix. All this stuff stacks up until finally you are just looking into the eyes of madness. And, there's got to be a better way to handle this. And that way is called configuration management. And specifically, I'm going to talk to you about Chef. So these are ripped right off of Opscode's bullet points. Opscode is the company that writes Chef. And this is taken straight from their little brochureware marketing section of their database. So what Chef does is, especially with this age of cloud machines and virtual hosting, Chef lets you turn everything into code. You can manage your servers by writing code. You can integrate with all of your applications, your directories, everything. And you can automatically configure your infrastructure aware applications, which is a buzzwordy way of saying you can do cool stuff like self-configuring monitoring, self-configuring load balancers, anything that requires searching across metadata. You've got a big repository of it, and you have all this information about your servers, and they can build themselves. So that part is really cool. You know, instance provisioning, building a machine out at Amazon is code or VMware. User administration is a JSON file. Again, it's code. Database installation. Create an object and you've got a MySQL instance. Code again. Application installation, all the way down the line. So you get all the benefits of working in code. It's testable. You can write unit tests against your Chef. It's versioned. You can version all of your configurations. It's repeatable. Everything is completely reusable as long as you make them in macro enough blocks. And it's really scalable. So getting started, first some philosophy behind it. It's inherently client-server. There is a version of Chef is in 3 versions, really. There's hosted Chef, which is kind of sold as a service. You buy the managed node. You can install your own Chef server. Ceph server, I do that all the time, via gem or apt. You can also use something called Chef Solo, which is a stripped-down version that loses all the search features and a couple of other things that you can, it's just a gem. You can build it right into your application. And the best part about Chef is that it's all Ruby, which means that if you are writing what's called a recipe, if you're building a config in the Chef DSL, you can just dump out to a Ruby block, and it'll work. The other nice thing about Chef is that it is a weak server and a strong client. Chef is a daemon that runs on your system, Windows or Linux, that checks in with a centralized host in minutes, and then looks for configuration changes and validates it and does key exchanges and all of that. Everything happens at the client. The server is just authentication and data repository and a search engine. So interfacing with Chef is done in a couple of ways. There's a command line tool called Knife. They're Rubyous. They're really into cute names. There is Chef, which is, again, cute name. It's like IRB for Chef. You can do all your configs interactively and test them all out. There are what are called cookbooks. So MySQL is a cookbook that we'll use tonight that installs and configures MySQL server or client. And that all comes in a bundled package called MySQL, and that's called a cookbook. And there is lots of code sharing. You are highly encouraged with Chef to turn all of your configs into Apache licensed bundles and share them out on this cookbook site. Chef requires, well, it doesn't require, but you would be very wise to use a repo when working with Chef to version everything. And I use GitHub just because it's easiest, and because Opscode provides a base repo that you can fork. And then lastly, there is a web UI, and that's for the hosted version. That's at manage.opscode.com. I'm a systems guy. I live life at 80 by 24. I'm always in the terminal window. So that one's not for me. So what you would need to get started with Chef is really get started with a hosted Chef account. They give you 5 nodes for free to get used to it and understand how it works. It's a lot easier to use their hosted infrastructure than it is to try and install your own Chef server. I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to install Chef server and given up, but it inspires a lot of rage quits. So you'll need really a cloud provider account if you don't have your own VMware machine to play from. So Amazon or Rackspace. You need a GitHub account. That's free again. And then you need a configured Chef workstation, which I've got here tonight. And again, that's installing Chef Workstation or Chef Client is as easy as gem install Chef and running your dependencies. And then probably you'll need some cookbooks unless you want to start from scratch. And again, you can just go grab a series of useful cookbooks out of cookbooks.opscode.com. It's all up there to download. Some of them are honestly in need of deprecation, but most of them are very active. So just running through, there are a lot of core concepts in Chef. Chef is complicated. There is a reasonable learning curve to it. But once you are up and running with it, it will more than pay itself off. It is, I always call it the lazy sysadmin rule, which is that we're willing to spend 8 hours on Monday so that we don't have to spend 5 minutes a day the rest of the year. And this is the ultimate lazy sysadmin tool. You pay up front and you reap benefits all the way down. Building out a server now takes me about 5 minutes. Well, let's go back through this real quick. So again, there's the server, which I've already mentioned. There's a repo. A client would be an application that executes Chef policy. A node is the server, of course, that's being operated on. An environment is a great way to set a larger, staging, prod, per project, that sort of thing. And it's a great way to bound search queries, as well as an environment can version out your cookbooks so that as new things come along, you aren't breaking your old environments. Roles are parts of cookbooks. I'll show in a moment. And then attributes are an attribute. A recipe again. A cookbook is really a roll-up of roles, attributes, and recipes. You can write providers in Chef, which is it's one of the new features that they've added in the last couple of revisions. Providers are great. For instance, there is an apt provider for anybody who's into Debian-based Linux machines, where I can, just as part of my code, I can send out a command that causes the machine to subscribe to a new apt repo. So that's handy if you're using Nginx, for instance, and you want to subscribe to their repo and keep your Nginx up to date. And then definitions are an older version of providers that are deprecating out a little bit. So for our demo, I thought about building something on a Ruby stack, but I want to make the point that Chef, though it's written in Ruby, is great for provisioning anything. So I'm going to build a LAMP stack tonight. Hopefully that doesn't make me too unpopular in a Ruby group. But we are going to install, from nothing, there is no server right now, we're going to provision and build out an Ubuntu LTS server on 10.04 with configured IP tables firewall. We're going to install a user account for me. We're going to build out a full LAMP stack that will configure MySQL with the appropriate passwords and store them back into Chef without me ever knowing what those passwords are. They're just put in a convenient place for me to go get them. And then it's going to install WordPress and have the whole thing up and running in, every time I've tested this so far, under 5 minutes. It's EC2, so you never know how long it's really going to take, but I think it's been benching out about 3.5. So let's switch over. Nothing makes for a great presentation like a terminal window. But just to give you an idea, huh?
Can you bump up the font size?
Yeah, we'll bump that up a little bit. What is that? There we go. Is that better? Yeah. Everybody see? All right. So in here, I am in my my local Git copy of my Chef repo right now. You can see there's certificates, my Chef config, my cookbooks, my environments, my roles, and my data bags. So a data bag I didn't really touch on in the presentation. It is a hierarchical JSON store of things like my user accounts. Let's take a look at the environment I built for this. So as you can see, this is a really simple JSON file. It describes the environment that does not exist right now, but will be created. And right now, in there I have some override attributes that are set at the environment level. And they are going to grant sudo to the groups admin, wheel, and sysadmin. And then they're going to grant me passwordless sudo, for which I would never do in real life, just to be clear. But for the purposes of the demo tonight, I'm going to save a little bit of time. So every machine that's built out as part of this environment is going to inherit these attributes. I don't have to worry about setting up user accounts on any of these machines or setting up sudo privileges. And if I take something out later, if I take sysadmin out, then the sudoers file will be rebuilt the next time the Chef client runs, and the sysadmin group will no longer have sudo privileges. So rather than having to maintain a centralized directory for, say, a small app of 5 or 10 servers, this makes doing per host user authentication something that's actually scalable and practical. It's not a service. It's maybe not the best way to do it for a large infrastructure, but it's great for something that's maybe a contract side of 4 or 5 hosts. So to load that, I'm just going to say knife environment from file rubydemo.json, and that is going to upload straight to the Chef server, and then knife environment list here. We'll go out and talk to the Chef server, and I've got the default environment that it builds for everybody and the Ruby demo environment. So now let's look at some roles real quick. So a role is where you store actually configurations. You define the server's role. So I've got 2 roles I'm going to use tonight and 1 I'm not, but I built it just to show there's some versatility here. And the first one is the base role. So let's look at the base role here. So this has the name, the description. Again, I can set attributes in the role as well. And there is attribute inheritance and hierarchies is one of the existing pain points for Chef right now. You can run into situations where they append into arrays where you don't want them to, or one clobbers another. But you can also set attributes at the role level here. And then the run list is where you define a list of recipes that are actually going to go out and execute code on your servers. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up to control apt via Chef, since this is an Ubuntu server. The next thing I'm going to do is make sure the IP tables firewall is configured. Third thing I'm going to do is make sure that Chef is controlling OpenSSH. It's already installed in this case, but I want Chef to be in charge of it. Then it's going to install the latest config. Chef is going to manage Chef with these 3 Chef client lines here. It's going to upload a config. It's going to delete what's called the validation key, which is how a server advertises it to the Chef server, and sets up the initial key exchange. And then it's going to make sure that the Chef client runs as a service. And I could set as an attribute how often the Chef client checks in with the server. And then next, it's going to install any users in the sysadmins group in my data bag. And then it's going to make sure Chef is controlling sudo and upload those sudo privileges I showed earlier. And finally, because I love screen too, it's going to install screen. So this is, again, a base role. I would use this role on every server that I ever build. It's independent of environment. These are just things I like on my servers before we put them to any sort of work. So again, this time it's just knife role from file base. And then real quick, we can look at the Nginx one. And what the Nginx one would do would be install Nginx, in this case from package. And then it would set up IP tables to open ports 80 and 443. But we're not going to use Nginx tonight. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the WordPress one. And again, this one, I've got a run list here that's going to go to the Apache 2 cookbook and install the default role. IP tables, it's also going to open up 80 and 443. It's going to install PHP with mod PHP in this case. And then it's going to install MySQL as a server. And then the last thing it's going to do is install the latest version of WordPress from the WordPress guys themselves. .com, .org, I always forget. So we'll do. So we've uploaded our roles now. And there we go. And then, real quick, because I don't want to type this all out again, the last thing we're going to do here is all from the command line. We are going to go through and provision a hosted EC2. So, you know what? Let me clear this and get back to the top. And we can talk through this real quick. Time, just because I want to bench real quick how far it goes. I said under 5 minutes, so I hope I keep my promise. We're going to fire off knife. We're going to tell it to use the EC2, which is a separate gem. You just install gem install knife-EC2, and there you go. We're going to tell it to create a server with the roles base and WordPress in the -E for environment, Ruby demo environment. I've specified ahead of time. I went out to Canonical and got the latest Ubuntu 10.04 AMI from them. So there's your Amazon image ID. Then -G is, if you're familiar with EC2, that's just the default security group for my EC2 account. It's going to connect as user Ubuntu. It's going to name the host RubyDemo1. It's going to use an m1.large, and it's going to use my cjohnson.pem SSH key to kick this off. So I'm going to fire this off, and while that runs in the background, any questions? Yeah?
With the roles and the environments, you can specify those as either Ruby or JSON. Do you clearly have a preference for JSON?
I just named them .json. Okay, he's asking if the roles and environments files can be called, they can be .rb or .json. Real quick, as you can see, it's already provisioned the instance, and now it's waiting for Amazon to kick it up. So you were saying that roles and environments, these files can be Ruby or JSON. Honestly, I usually don't create files and then do knife roll from file. That's something I'm usually doing, or that's something I'm doing tonight. Generally, you can say knife roll create whatever, and that will dump you into your default editor. And because I'm doing all this from within a VM, I don't have Sublime Text, and I just decided to have some pre-cooked files here. So, I mean, they look the same whether you call them RB or JSON. It's all the same type of document.
How much of this would be the same or different if you were deploying to your own bare machine? Like how
Okay.
that
So how much of this would be the same or different if I was deploying to my own bare machine? It would be a little bit different. I would use a command called knife bootstrap. And there are bootstrap scripts out there whose job is to take various distros, including Windows or various Linux distros, and set them up as Chef clients ready to make a run. So I would bootstrap the server. I'd use knife bootstrap instead of knife EC2 server create. And my command line switches would be a little different, but otherwise it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah?
Religious question for you.
Okay.
How much of the application should be deployed through Chef versus through Capistrano or something like it layered on top of Chef?
That is a great question. Right now, I would say stick to Cap, honestly. That said, the Chef guys are actively working on this problem. They have an application cookbook right now that you can download and adapt to your application and to your needs. I was at a meetup, I guess, wow, that's 4 weeks ago now. Maybe 5 here. We're all done. 2 minutes 22. Wow. Fast. I got a good EC2 host tonight. I was at a meetup here about 5 weeks ago where one of the main Chef coders, someone who is actually affiliated with Opscode, was in here, and we had about an hour and 10-minute discussion about how to replace the application cookbook with something robust. So I would say that's coming, and I'm going to the Chef user conference here in about 2 weeks, and I bet that is 80% of what we talk about. So answer is not yet, soon. So. Huh? Oh no! It failed out. Dang. Runless contains invalid item. No such cookbook screen. Ah.
You didn't upload the zip file?
Oh, I didn't have screen up here. All right. Of course. It worked great yesterday, and now I'm in the demo. All right. So.
What did you just do with Knife Cookbook upload?
So what I did is I have a cookbook sitting in my repo for screen already that should have been out there. And what I did was tell it to upload the cookbook file from my repo up to the Chef server. So there is a disconnect between what is in your repo and what is running on the server. And so you always want to see that the cookbooks you're calling are out there on the server. Again, this is another one of the common pain points here.
Yeah, how do you manage that? Is there an easy way to manage the difference of like, go list, go look at the versions, compare the version in your file, your repo, and see?
Well, as I version through different, I created an instance just for this demo, but as I version through different cookbooks at Chef, the Chef server is going to keep all those versions. So right now there is not, I guess you could set up a hook if you wanted to, for your, for your GitHub commits that automatically upload the cookbook. But I kind of like having the extra step. Occasionally it bites me, like right now. But what I would much rather have is that happening than someone committing to the repo an incomplete cookbook and it's uploaded as the latest. And then Chef by default will use the latest cookbook if one is not specified in your environment. So I would much rather have people making considered decisions about what gets uploaded to Chef than automatically having that upload as we get into the repo.
Thank you very much.
All right.